March 19th, 2026. Broome International Airport, Western Australia. A Cessna 441 Conquest rolls down runway 10 and lifts into the morning. 7 people on board. 2 pilots, 5 passengers. The aircraft climbs to 500 feet, the autopilot clicks on, and for a few seconds everything reads normal. Then the torque runs low, the pilot reaches down to enrich the engines by feel, and both turboprops fall silent over the mangroves. The aviation establishment already has its verdict drafted, the 2 words it reaches for whenever a panel kills an airplane: pilot error. Yesterday, the Australian Transport Safety Bureau put the real finding in writing. The pilot did not fail, the panel did. This is not a story about a man who pressed the wrong button. This is a story about a cockpit that made pressing the wrong button the designed outcome. The start buttons and the stop buttons on a Cessna 441 site immediately adjacent to each other. Identical shape, identical size, a fraction of an inch apart. One enriches the fuel, the other kills the engine. And the manufacturer has known that for 20 years. When was the last time you reached for a control in your cockpit without looking at it? Tell me in the comments. If you want the engineering behind the crash reports instead of the press release, subscribe to Sky Ranch. I have read enough ATSB dockets to tell you what the panel does before the headline does. The brochure calls this a magnificent turboprop. The bench tells a colder story. We start now. The Conquest is genuinely a remarkable airplane. It was the first purpose-built turboprop Cessna ever designed. It cruises above 300 knots, it is pressurized, and its service ceiling is near 35,000 feet. It is powered by 2 Honeywell TPE 331 turboprops, and its maximum takeoff weight is 9,850 pounds. Pilots love it. It is also flown single pilot constantly, which makes the panel geometry matter even more. Cessna grounded the 441 twice in its early years because of a slim tail structural problem. The company fixed the tail. It never fixed the buttons. The aircraft was VHLBZ, operated by Skippers Aviation. It did not roll out of the hangar healthy. The right engine's electronic fuel control computer carried a logged pre-existing defect. That computer normally automates the fuel enrichment for you. With it dead, both engines have to be started and run in manual mode. Manual mode means the crew works the start buttons by hand. The aircraft was dispatched legally under a minimum equipment list. The paperwork was clean. The physics were compromised. A minimum equipment list is a document the regulator approves in advance. It lists what can be broken while the airplane still flies legally. It is not a loophole, it is pre-approved risk. The regulator decides ahead of time which failures you may carry into the sky. Here, the MEL let the airplane fly with a dead fuel control computer. That computer is the automation that would have done the enrichment. Remove it, and the job lands on the pilot's hand. Remove it, and the pilot's hand lands on those buttons. ATSB Chief Commissioner Angus Mitchell put it plainly. The engines had to be started in manual mode, with the pilots planning to use the left and right start buttons to enrich each engine with fuel. Read that again. The defect did not hide from the crew. The crew specifically requested this aircraft for training. A known defect is not an accident. It is an accepted risk, signed off by the institution. And Skippers was not flying a clean record into Broome. In September 2025, the ATSB opened 2 separate safety investigations into the operator. In February 2026, 1 month before this crash, a Skippers aircraft made an emergency landing after a mechanical failure. This is a pattern, not a single bad morning. Now look at the panel itself. To the left of the pilot's seat sits a row of buttons. The start buttons and the stop buttons live on the same surface, side by side. In manual mode, the start button does double duty. It starts the engine on the ground, it enriches the fuel in the air. The stop button does one thing: it cuts the engine dead. At 500 feet, the pilot's eyes belong on the instruments and the airspace, not the sub-panel. The torque reads below target, so the pilot announces the enrichment and reaches down by feel. This is the designed workflow. Every certified panel runs on muscle memory under load, but the start and stop buttons share the same shape, the same size, the same height. The fingers cannot tell them apart. The hand finds the stop buttons instead of the start buttons. Both engines die. This is not incompetence, it is geometry. The training captain hears the engine note change. He asks the pilot flying one question: "Did you press the stop buttons?" The pilot is not sure. That uncertainty is the whole indictment. A panel you cannot read by touch is a panel that lies to your hands, and Cessna already knew the hands get confused. The flight manual references a start button. Guard plate. A physical cover exists to stop inadvertent activation, but the guard sits over the start button. The manufacturer worried about an accidental start. It never guarded the button that turns the engines off. The guard logic was backwards. When a pilot shuts down both engines after takeoff, the file writes itself. Pilot error. Case closed. Manufacturer protected. But ergonomics is a science, not an excuse. In 1942, a psychologist named Alphonse Chapanis solved this exact problem. B-17 pilots kept retracting the landing gear after touchdown instead of the flaps. The pilots were not incompetent. The gear and flap switches were identical in shape and sat right next to each other. Chapanis attached a small rubber wheel to the gear switch and a wedge shape to the flap switch. The hand could finally tell them apart. The accident stopped. That fix became foundational aerospace doctrine. The Cessna 441 received its FAA type certificate on August 19, 1977, 35 years after Chapanis. The identical adjacent button design sailed through certification anyway. Aviation Human Factors gives you 6 ways to separate 2 critical controls: shape, size, location, color, mode of operation, and labeling. The 441's start and stop buttons fail at least 3 of them. Same shape, same size, not enough distance. The FAA accepted that layout. The pilot pays the invoice when it fails. A US Air Force survey of 500 pilots found half of all in-flight errors involve operating the wrong control. Half. That is not a competence problem. That is a design problem wearing a pilot's uniform. And the design problem is not cheap. ATPE 331 overhaul runs roughly $180,000 per side. That is $360,000 in turbines hanging on a panel where telling stop from start costs nothing. Which lands harder for you? That the buttons are physically identical, or that the science condemning them is 84 years old? Drop it below. Because this is not the first time this panel bit this operator. In 2006, a Cessna 441 named VHLBA, flown by Skippers Aviation, lost an engine in flight. The pilot pressed the stop button by mistake. He was in the middle of explaining the start button guard plate to another pilot when he did it. After that, the Civil Aviation Safety Authority issued a safety alert to skippers. The alert said, "Do not dispatch these Cessna 441s in manual MEL mode." That was 2006. In 2026, the same operator dispatched the same aircraft type in exactly that configuration. The alert existed. Nobody enforced it. The hardware never changed. VHLBZ carried its own warning too. In 2003, that exact airframe rejected a takeoff for an engine power issue. During the emergency, the pilot selected both stop buttons to shut down. The stop buttons are a primary control, used under pressure, a fingertip from the enrichment buttons. The record warned everyone. The panel stayed the same. The pattern runs wider than one airframe. In 2018, another Skippers Cessna 441, VHLBY, ran out of fuel east of Broome. Same operator, same type, same corridor. And the family has killed before. In 2017, a Cessna 441 crashed at Renmark, South Australia, and people died. The cause traced to improper simulated engine failure training. Again, not the structure, the human-machine interaction. So, return to Broome. The pilot flying had 1,256 total hours and just 56.6 on the 441. He was still learning the panel's geography by feel. The training captain had 1,080 hours on this exact type. He knew the panel. He also knew there was no altitude to argue with. At 500 feet with both engines dead, a twin turboprop has maybe 30 to 45 seconds. There is no time for a restart. Altitude is time, and they had neither. So the captain did the only thing physics allowed. He dead-sticked a 9,850-pound twin turboprop into the mangroves, 3.6 kilometers from the runway. All 7 people walked out. 1 passenger was seriously hurt. The airplane took the damage, including a bent propeller. The captain saved those passengers from the manufacturer's panel. Stick-and-rudder beat the drawing. Here is where the file turns cold. The panel did not malfunction. It functioned exactly as Cessna drew it. The start and stop buttons sit where the certification approved them to sit. The MEL worked as written, dispatching a defect that forced the crew's hands onto those buttons in flight. The safety alert worked as written, sitting in a drawer for 20 years. Every step was individually defensible. No engineer at Cessna wanted 7 people in the mangroves. No regulator signed a memo to kill an airplane on takeoff. The manufacturer drew adjacent identical buttons. The FAA certified them. The operator dispatched the defect that demanded them. The pilot just happened to be the one who tripped the trap. You can call that pilot error. The bench calls it a panel functioning as designed, and gravity does not negotiate with engineering drawings. So here is what the mechanic does with this, because anger is not a checklist. If you fly a Cessna 441, learn that panel by touch in daylight long before you need it in the dark. Treat any manual mode dispatch as a 2-pilot, eyes-on operation. Never reach for that start button in flight without a second set of eyes confirming it. A guard belongs on the stop button. The fleet still does not have one, because every Cessna 441 flying today still has that panel. No airworthiness directive has addressed the adjacency of start and stop. The report documented the crash. It did not change the hardware. The Cessna 441 Conquest is a magnificent machine until you have to find a button without looking. So when you reach for a switch on your next departure, what are you trusting? Your muscle memory or the engineer who decided stop and start should feel identical under your fingers. One of them flies the airplane, the other one writes the report. Tell me which one you trust in the comments. If Sky Ranch is where you read the docket, the aviation press will not. Subscribe. More forensics are already on the bench.